Shalom, Israel.
Shalom.
All praise to the Most High. We halfway through the week. And you guys know what goes down every Wednesday. Every Wednesday we get into history. So Wednesday, world history according to the Bible. Today we're going to be talking about Israelites in the East. Israelites in the East. When you go throughout the scriptures, a lot of times we get caught up in just the Americas. You know, a lot of times when we're sitting there and we're reading our scriptures, we understand that a lot of things, you know, you look at modern day Babylon, you look at, you know, Sodom and Egypt, we know all of that is America. And occasionally when we're teaching this and we're talking about it, we'll imply, and sometimes we'll outright say that there are Israelites scattered abroad. But at the same time, we don't really realize that, because when you run into certain brothers, certain sisters, or when we're talking about certain nations, all of a sudden we're calling them all heathen. None of them are actually, you know, Israelites. So it's very important that we go and do our research. It's very important that we look through the history and see where our people could be, see where our people are. So that way, you know, the goal at the end of the day is to gather the lost sheep from all four corners of the earth, not just the Americas. Of course, primarily if you're in the Americas, that's what you want to do. But we got people, you know, we got brothers, whether it's military or people that actually grew up in these areas, like, you know, in Asia or even Western Europe or even Eastern Europe, right? So our people are all across the four corners of the earth. The Most High said that. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28 first. Deuteronomy 28 and 64, excuse me. Good.
And the Lord shall scatter thee among the people, amongst all people.
Mm-hmm. Read on.
From one end of the earth until the other.
And that's the thing, right? We were scattered amongst all people from one end of the earth even unto the other. So that means we will be scattered abroad all across the four corners of the earth. And a lot of times we forget this. And this is something that we have to make sure that we're taking into consideration, especially when we're talking about, oh, all 12 tribes are just over here. That's not true. If you're saying that, 12 tribes are only in the Americas, then it becomes a problem because, well, what tribe are the people from, the Israelites in Africa, the Israelites in Europe, the Israelites in Spain, the Israelites in Australia, the Israelites in the Solomon Islands, the Israelites in Fiji, the Israelites that have been scattered into the Philippines, the Israelites that have been scattered in all the isles, all the islands, right? So when we pigeonhole it, when we marginalize it to just the Western Hemisphere, specifically just the Americas, like what about the Israelites that are in Canada? We go all through, Native Americans or this, Mexicans or that, Salvadorans this, Brazilians that. Okay, well, there's Israelites in Canada too. We start to marginalize it, and then it makes it more difficult to gather the rest of the lost sheep. Right? So we have to remember these things and take this into consideration when we're teaching this truth, right? So we have Israelites that are in the east. I wanted to grab a couple more scriptures, but I don't think I'm going to get it. Let's go to, give me a second. Let me get over here. Let's go to the PowerPoint. We're going to jump straight into it. See it all praises. Okay. Let's jump into it. So Israelites in the east. So let's talk about early ancient history, the early ADs, right after Christ, during the time of the Romans besieging Jerusalem, shortly thereafter. It says in 70, which is 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the second temple in Jerusalem. A large part of the quote-unquote Jewish population was either massacred or exiled. In Judea, the area near present-day Israel, 25% of the Jewish population was exterminated and 10% enslaved. Jews became a minority in their own land. Many Jews fled to Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, also known as, it was the area of the Babylonian Empire at the time, ancient Babylon. And the rest fled to lands around the Mediterranean, presently known as southeastern Spain, southern France, southern Italy, Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey. Later, the Jews began to head north to present-day northern France, Belgium, Holland, Austria, Bulgaria, Bosnia, and northern Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tanzania, Algeria, Morocco. By 300, about 3 million Jews settled in most parts of the Roman Empire except Britain. A million lived west of Macedonia, Greece, with the majority settling throughout Asia Minor and east to the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf. Jews live as far north as Cologne, Germany, right? So we see here that this is the siege of 70 AD. This isn't even talking about the northern kingdom yet. This is talking about the southern kingdom and, of course, the remnant of the northern kingdom that was there that had gotten besieged by the Roman army, captured, captured, conquered, enslaved, and murdered. And those that fled went to all of these different areas. Now, these are not the only areas, because around this same time, it wasn't later on, but in this exact same time, a lot of people fled into northern Africa, right? So we see they fled all through the Roman Empire. They also fled down into Egypt and northern Africa, and I believe we're going to read why a little later in the PowerPoint. As a matter of fact, let me think. Do I want to go to that? Yeah, let's go to the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew, chapter, I think it might be one or two. Chapter 2. And we're going to read verse 13. See if I have I do. All praises. Matthew chapter 2 and verse 13.
And when they went, and when they were departed, behold, the angel of the in the. Start from the top. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord approacheth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take a young child and his mother and flee into Egypt.
Right? It said, take the young child and flee into Egypt. Read.
And be thou there until I bring the word. For Herod will seek a young child to destroy him.
Right. So we see here, and this was nothing new. Matter of fact, watch this. Zonder Van Bible Compact Dictionary, under the definition of Alexandria. It says, where's the piece that I want? Page 30. What is page 31? Founded by Alexander the Great, successively, its harbors formed. It was the chief grain port, its merchant ships, largest flight is usually, let me see, where is it? Where are you? I think it's page 2. Books, roles that are prominent. The Jews enjoyed privilege. Is this it? The Jews enjoyed equal privileges with the Greeks so that they became fixed there. At Alexandria, the Old Testament revelation was brought in contract. Oh, you know what? I think it might be later on in the PowerPoint, actually. That's for a different reason. But you're going to see that the Jews always fled into Egypt. The Jews always fled toward Africa whenever there was an issue, right? You see all through the scriptures, we had a relationship to a degree with Egypt. Now, Rome had a huge empire, right? It didn't necessarily go into. Actually, let me see if I can do something really quickly for you guys. If I can pull it up here, I might try to pull it up on the other one too. This one. This would be simple. Parthian Empire, Roman Empire, temporarily held by Rome. Let's see if this pops. This is. That's the wrong color. Let me see if I can gain a simple one. I guess this will work. So it says around 117 AD, the Roman Empire at its greatest extent went from, I'll keep it on us. This is on my computer. I just pulled it up. The Roman Empire went as far east as Armenia, and also toward the eastern side of Arabia, and as far west as the Iberian Peninsula and portions of northern Africa, or the Atlas Mountains, right? So Rome had, and this was like later on, this is like 117 AD, so this wasn't early on, but this was as their empire continued to grow and expand. So when we got, at the time, when we were conquered in 70 AD, or being conquered in 70 AD, they had a lot of Europe. They had a decent amount of Asia Minor, and they were beginning their conquest towards North Africa, right? So when they conquered us, it said that we fled into areas in Africa, we fled into areas of Europe to flee the Roman persecution. Now, you can take it back to the PowerPoint. Now, when we look at when they fled into Africa, it says in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state. With great slaughter during the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Now, I want to deal with the point of during the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, right? Let me see if I can grab this particular thing, Roman. Let's go here. Pompey the Great says that he began his reign. He was assassinated. Let me see if I can find when his reign began. Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, born September 29th, died September 28th, 40 BCE. So that was early BC all the way to, who was it, Julius? Julius Caesar. All the way till about 44 BC. So before we even hit the AD era, there was already about 1 million Jews that had fled into Africa. Now, this was nothing new. We had already been going into those areas already. We had been, remember, even when we left Babylon, not every single Israelite left Babylon. When we left Assyria, the 10 tribes, not every single Jew or Israelite left Assyria. So we were already migrating to these areas bit by bit. And after a certain amount of generations, even if you start off with 100 people in a particular country, and let's say 100 people, 50 couples, I'm going to make it easy. 50 couples, each of them has one child. We just multiplied it by 2. That's 100 people now, or excuse me, that's 200 people now. That's 100 couples. 20 more years, let's say they all just have one kid. So now you have 100 times, 200 times 2. That's now 400. So in the span of 100 years, you can have tens of thousands of individuals, right? So when we would leave, it's not like everyone would leave. Just like when the northern kingdom all left, remember in the New Testament, you saw that there was a woman of Asher that Christ ended up running into. So we saw that some of the northern kingdom was still there. So it says that there were Jews that had fled into Africa by this time. There was about 1 million of them that had fled. I don't know if it was just full-blown fled or they fled and they procreated. But it said about 1 million Jews were in Africa at this particular time, right? It says the suppression of, you can take it back to the PowerPoint, Kanash. And all of the, all of the citations are at the bottom. So this one was from University of Southern Florida. This one's from Babylon to Timbuktu. This one's from the Revelation. That's the name of the book. It says the suppression of rebellion under the slogan of quote unquote law and order may be a good principle, may be good in principle, but a good thing may be carried too far. So it was in this case. The pagan Romans attacked our Jewish foreparents indiscriminatively, both the soldiers of our Jewish foreparents and the uninvolved peaceful population, without mercy. As a result of this merciless attack, Many of our Jewish foreparents fled to those parts of northwest Africa. So we fled into Egypt and migrated west. Known today as Tanzania, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, excuse me. Many of our Jewish foreparents fled to the areas where Rome did not have any jurisdiction. That's what I was looking for. So when they fled into these areas of North Africa, they fled here because Rome couldn't terrorize them because they didn't have jurisdiction in these areas, right? This was the region of the South and Sahara Desert and the Sudan. Grazel says, such is the explanation of how the Sahara Desert first acquired Jewish tribes, toughened by fighting tradition and possessed of physical characteristics, black, which it is said still makes them approximate very closely to the original Jewish population of Palestine. So, I want to go up just a little bit to read this part again. It says, many of our Jewish foreparents fled to areas where Rome did not have jurisdiction. This was the region of the South, the Sahara, of the South, the Sahara Desert, and the Sudan. Grazel said, such is the explanation of how the Sahara Desert first acquired Jewish tribes, toughened by fighting traditions and possessed the physical characteristics, which it is said still makes them approximately very close to the original Jews, right? So it says these people, where is it? The fact that these people had fled Roman persecution, they had migrated, they had their own communities, it says that's the explanation that this particular person uses to speak on why they were so, what's the word? They were so separated and against the pagan traditions of the Africans around them. In addition to the fact that they possessed the characteristics, which was being dark-skinned, that the original Jews possessed as well. So that's something to take into consideration, because when we talk about Jews, a lot of times, a lot of people are, a lot of our people are, what do you call it? Confused. You know, people you can sit there and tell someone that you're a Jew, they're gonna be like, yeah, but you're black. Well, yeah, the original Jews were black. And a lot of times we don't understand that because we've been brainwashed to believe that the Jews don't look like us. But when you look all through history, you look at Babylon and Timbuktu, you can look at this book, Revelation, you can look at even artifact or artwork like the Romanian Vorone, which paints the saints and the angels and everyone else dark-skinned. It's only in America where we've been brainwashed and we don't know who we are, right? Let's continue. Of the part played by our Jewish foreparents of Cyrene or Kyrene in the insurrection of 115 and 116 AD, Slush writes, in 115 they threw themselves on the Greeks, massacring. It is said some Egypt and in Chittim, or also known as Cyprus, the war lasted 3 years and put them to the sword. Even the women were not spared. Cyrene or Kyrene was devastated and almost depopulated of our foreparents. To cut off the retreat of the rebels, the Romans turned the whole country into desert. These means, however, only succeeded in drawing a large number of Jews or Jewish foreparents further into Sirte or Libya and toward the Atlas Mountains. So again, we fled Jerusalem, we migrated into Egypt, and then we moved across North Africa and migrated into West Africa and eventually down into, Northwest Africa, and then eventually migrated down to West Africa, right? So the author is speaking on one of the scholars, the historian scholars, and said this is more than likely how they even ended up in Libya and the Atlas Mountains, which is Northwest Africa, and it was due to us fleeing, which is let's go to John. which was something that was prophesied by Christ. John chapter 4. Verse 24. Let me see. John chapter 4 and verse 20. You know, it's 20 something. I just seen it. 21.
This is the book of John, chapter 3, verse 21. And Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when we shall neither in this mountain when we shall neither in this mountain nor ye at Jerusalem worship the Father.
Salakia, where is it? Give me a second. I'm sorry, Luke. I'm way off. Luke 21. My bad. The book of Luke, chapter 21, and verse 20. I don't know what I was on. Luke 21 and 20.
It's the book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 20. And we shall see Jerusalem compassed with the armies.
It says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, read.
Then know that the desolation therefore nigh.
It says, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh, right? Verse 21, this is the part.
Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains.
It says, then let them flee into the mountains, right? And then it says, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. So it tells you, Christ had already spoke about it. He said, there's going to be another desolation. Of course, we had already had the first one. Actually, we had the, I guess that would have been technically the third one, excuse me. Because we had the Babylonians came in and took everything from us. The Greeks destroyed it, which is where we get Hanukkah, because we rededicated the temple. And then Rome came in and did the exact same thing, right? It says, now when the desolation, you'll know the desolation is nigh when when Jerusalem becomes compassed with armies. This didn't happen but about 40 years, 50 years later, something around that time, right? And he said, then flee into the mountains. Now, we read earlier, some people fled east. Some people fled to Afghanistan. Some people fled into, what were those areas? Some people fled to Spain, Mesopotamia, areas of Greece, Italy, Turkey. Then a lot of people fled into Africa, fled into North Africa, fled into the Atlas Mountains, right? Christ told us, he said, when you see this, head out, flee to the mountains. And that's what we did. We fled to the Atlas Mountains. You can bring it back to the PowerPoint. This is another excerpt from the Revelation. And actually, no, I'm sorry. I think we read that. Yeah, we read that, where it says we fled to the Atlas Mountains. Here it is. Hebrewisms of West Africa. By two routes he bred cultures, because now this gets into how do we get to West Africa? Because a lot of people will sit there and say, well, the Jews only fled into North Africa. They never went to West Africa. You can't prove that. Well, historians did prove that. By two routes, Hebraic cultures may have penetrated to West Africa, from the north, across the desert wastes, and from the east, along the general line of traffic that skirts the great tropical forest. That Hebraic influence did penetrate to the very heart of Negro land by both routes indicated will be shown in due course, Negro land being West Africa. Nigeria, Ghana, even into Congo and all of those areas, almost in areas of Central Africa as well. But it said those were the two routes that was taken. It said from the north across the desert wastes, and from the east along the general line of the traffic that skirts the great tropical forests. Now, let's also talk about this. Remember, we just read that there was a lot of Israelites that fled into Spain. It says the Spanish rabbi and scholar Abraham Abin Daoud wrote in Anno 1161, year 1161, a tradition exists with the quote-unquote Jewish community of Granada, that they are from the inhabitants of Jerusalem, of the descendants of Judah and Benjamin, rather than from the villages and towns of the outlying districts, quote-unquote, of Palestine. Elsewhere, he writes about his maternal grandfather's family and how they came to Spain. When Titus prevailed over Jerusalem, his officer, who was appointed over Hispania, appeased him, requesting that he send to him captives made up of the nobles of Jerusalem. And so he sent a few of them to him. And there were amongst them those who made curtains and who were knowledgeable in the work of silk, and one whose name was Baruch. And they remained in Merida. Here, Rabbi Abraham ben David, or Abraham ben David, refers to the second influx of Jews into Spain, shortly after the destruction of Israel's second temple. So remember, we read earlier, when Israel got ransacked, when the Romans came in and besieged Jerusalem, a lot of them fled into Europe. A lot of them fled into Eastern Europe. A lot of them fled further into the Middle East. A lot of them fled into Africa. These are all the places where the Israelites fled. Now remember, 10 tribes are gone already. Majority of them already made it to the Americas at this time. This is 800 years after that, 700 and some change, right? This is all Southern Kingdom. Because people are, Judah's African Americans. Judah is, and Benjamin, Levi, that's Haiti and Jamaica and okay. Here's the thing. One, Simeon was here way before Levi. So I guess it's just, by coincidence that they dropped Haiti off, dropped Levi off on the same island as Haiti. Because remember, Northern Kingdom left around 690 BC, because the Assyrian captivity was around 722. They weren't there that long. I think it was like 70 years. I could be wrong. Let me see how long the Assyrian captivity lasted. That's what I think it was. Could be wrong though. Ooh. After 3-year siege. Let me get the actual. After the initial deportation, let me see if I had it written down. I don't know what I did with it. Okay, I know when they took them. Trying to see. I know it was about. I didn't write that, huh? Let's see if we can get an actual. Oh no, it was only about 20 years. The Assyrian siege of Jerusalem was failed. Then capital kingdom of Judah carried out. Yeah. Shoot, I think we were both wrong. Let me double check. The Assyrian siege of Jerusalem, circa 701, was failed. In the capital carried out Sennacherib. 720. Okay, I don't want to keep the people waiting. I'll pull up the information later. But the Assyrian captivity didn't last that long. We ended up leaving. We migrated to the Americas. There's a whole presentation on that. This is why we say the so-called Latinos and Native Americans are Israelites, because one, they have history that says it, and two, when you look at the migration and even the scriptures allude to this is where they went, because this is the only place that you can even fathom to be known as Arsareth when you read the book of Esdras, right? So they're already gone. Siege of 70 AD, there was a few tribes or few people from various tribes of the northern kingdom that was still in Jerusalem. So, of course, wherever they went as well. But the majority of them was southern kingdom. They fled into Spain, Africa, Europe, various areas of Europe, even further east. So when people say, and this is where it gets dangerous, when people, when you have the conversation with people and they're like, oh, you're Jewish? Yeah, where do you live? Or my people are from Syria. Oh, you're not really a Jew. That's a dangerous thing to do because they migrated in that area. A lot of them migrated in that area. We had hundreds of thousands of Israelites, and they all went in different directions. And a lot of them went further into the Middle East. So while there are a lot of imposters, absolutely, we do have a dispersed over there as well, right? It says, and then this goes into when they were actually exiled, Jewish people. This is from the Oxford World Encyclopedia. Though they were tolerated for their usefulness, they suffered periodic persecution. Having been expelled from Spain in 1492, the Sephardim-speaking Ladinos, a Spanish dialect, found refuge in North Africa. So even those that were in Spain, these were Southern Kingdom, they left because, mind you, Spain and the Iberian Peninsula is just a boat ride away from North Africa. So when they were expelled from Spain, they went into North Africa. Mind you, we were already in North Africa. So we have a lot of Israelites to this day still in North Africa, Northwest Africa, as well as areas of West Africa, as well as areas in Central Africa. So when you're saying all Africans are Hamites, and when people are saying they're Jews over there, no, that's a damn Hamite, that's a convert. No. We have a lot of people that were there. Not every single Israelite was captured and brought over here in slave ships. And that's the misconception that we have. That didn't happen. Not to mention, when you go and read the history, while we were migrating down to West Africa, a lot of Jews settled in other areas on the way down. Some of them stayed in Morocco. Some of them, as they were getting closer to, Ghana, Nigeria, people stayed in these areas. Some people continued further into Central America. This is when we get into the Republic of Congo and all that. We didn't just stop in Ghana. We didn't just stop in Nigeria, right? We were all over Africa, and we would pull up and say, this is where we're staying. We would have our village or our community, and they saw that we were different because we kept different customs from them, from the surrounding villages, the surrounding communities. But Jews were all over the place, so that's why what tribe are you from, or what village are you from? It's like we were everywhere. I get it to a degree. You can definitely tell, like, oh, the Yoruba, right, or the Kohen, or the Igbo, right? But there's more than just those, and that's what we forget when we talk about North Africa. A lot of people don't mention the tribes that are in North Africa because a lot of them fled there and stayed. People don't talk about the tribes that are still in Spain or areas around Spain or areas in Greece or areas in Italy. Our Israelite brothers and sisters, you have something? You want to say something? Okay. Our Israelite brothers and sisters are all over the Eastern Hemisphere. They're not as saturated as we are on the Western Hemisphere because this is where the majority of us went, especially the Northern Kingdom. As a majority, they came over here. We did all of that history, did all of that research. That's clear as day. But Southern Kingdom, everywhere. That's what people don't realize. They're everywhere. We're just reading through this history, we see that they're everywhere, right? Now, let's talk about this one. The Jews of Ethiopia, right? Amaziah, we going to get to that too. Don't worry about it. We just touching it. We finna get to that in a moment. The Jews of Ethiopia. Says most likely the Beta Israel, which is Bath Israel, which is House of Israel, arrived in Ethiopia between the 1st and 6th centuries, coming as merchants and artisans from various countries in the regions. Scholars once believed that during the Middle Ages, the Beta Israel or House of Israel were a homogeneous group living under unified autonomous Jewish rule. Yet new discoveries have shown that the truth is far more complex. It seems that the Ethiopian Jewish community was, for the most part, fragmented both physically and religiously, with each house of Israel village appointing its own spiritual and secular leaders. There was little contact between Beta Israel communities or House of Israel communities, and usually no overarching leadership uniting them. Watch this. Let's go to Judges. Go to the last chapter, it's like the second to last verse. This is nothing new. We was doing this back then too. So when you look in Ethiopia, there's a number of Jewish communities, quote unquote Jewish communities. These people were here before the Ashkenazi and all of them became quote unquote Jewish, right? This was far before them. Go to Judges. What's the last chapter? 21, 25. Judges chapter 21, 25.
It's the book of Judges, chapter 21 and verse 25. In those days there were no king.
Right. In this particular day, there was no king, right? In Israel, read.
In Israel, every man did that which was in his own eyes.
Every man did that which was right in his own eyes, right? So this is nothing new. When you read the book of Judges, the book of Judges is exactly that. There was no king. There were a bunch of judges in each tribe, in each village, and they didn't really overlap with one another. They dealt with each other, but they didn't really deal with each other, and we was always on BS, and then somebody had to come save us. It's nothing new. It's what we did. So when you see that the same thing happened in Ethiopia, it's nothing new. People were migrating there too. Remember, when you read about Solomon and his army were going all over the world. Not all of them came back. Shoot, some of them came over to the Americas or areas in Africa and was like, yo, it's beautiful here. I'm gonna just pull up here. This is what it is. So this is nothing new. So it was the same thing when we were going over into Ethiopia, whether it was to trade or whatever the case is, we were there. So we see all through Africa, we done shown that when we ran out to avoid Rome, all through Europe, right? Now, migration east. This is a good one. It says, the oral history of Bani Manasseh, which is Ban Manasseh, which is the son of Manasseh. That was this individual's name. The history of Bani Manasseh that was passed down for 2,700 years describes their escape from slavery in Assyria to Media, Persia. From there, they moved to Afghanistan, the Middle East, mostly through less traveled areas. So they was moving and they were hiding. So they was taking the back streets, essentially. Ever on the lookout for kings or powerful people who might drag them back into slavery. From Afghanistan, they traveled toward Hindu Kush. Now, this is what Hindu Kush is. When you read, Babylon and Timbuktu actually has a really good few pages on this. It talks about in ancient times there were two Kushes. One was in Ethiopia, one was east around the area of India, right? So when they're saying they traveled through India Kush, they're talking about that area. And I think a lot of times that's where the confusion comes in, because a lot of people are trying to figure out, well, which nation is Kush? Some people say it's Ethiopia. Some people say it's the people in India. Who knows, right? But from our studies, the Kush that it refers in the Bible is definitely those in the areas of Ethiopia, in the areas of the region known as Ethiopia. But it says Hindu Kush and proceeded to Tibet, then to Kaifeng, reaching the Chinese city around 240 BC. So remember, we were taken into captivity. Northern Kingdom was taken into captivity around 720 BC. We left shortly after. I think it might have been 70 years, or maybe that was the Babylonian captivity. I know the Assyrian captivity wasn't that long, right? Then we ended up leaving. Majority of us took the River Euphrates down and then ended up in the Americas. But remember, that wasn't 100% of the 10 tribes. That's where we get things confused. We think that 100% of the 10 tribes went to this particular area, right? No, a lot of them, when they escaped, they all went separate ways, but the majority of them went to a particular place. That was the Americas. These particular individuals fled into Afghanistan, into India, until they made it to Asia. Now watch this. The B'nai Menashe believed that while in China, their ancestors were enslaved yet again. During their years there, large numbers of Israelites were killed and their assimilation started. These events caused the Israelites to flee and live in caves. The group was expelled in 100 CE. And their leather scrolls, so they had scrolls, their own version of the Torah, where they were keeping the laws, their rendition of the prophets and the writings, right? It says their leather scrolls were confiscated and burned. At that point, different groups went in various directions. Now, from Asia, when they ran about the caves, they got their books taken away, they all fled into different directions. Watch this. Some went down to the Mekong River into Vietnam. Some went to the Philippines. Some went to Siam. Some went to Thailand and Malaysia. While some of the Israelites moved to Burma and West India. Till today, some people refer to these people as Shinlung, the cave dwellers, right? So it's madness when we talk about this all the time. The Israelites are as the sand of the sea. We got in trouble by the most. Go to Zechariah chapter 7 and verse 14. We're going to touch another scripture on it. We got, the scriptures say we are as the sand of the sea. The sand of the sea covers, so you got to understand how many, if you just grab if you grab a handful of sand, how many grains that is. And we're all over the place. Zechariah 7 and 14. You got that? Zechariah chapter 7. And read verse 14.
This is the book of Zechariah, chapter 7, verse 14. But I scattered them within a whirlwind.
It said, I scattered them with a whirlwind. Pay attention to what that's if a tornado or a typhoon or a hurricane comes and start picking things up, they're not going to just start placing things in what I'm going to place you over here. No, it throws it all over the place. It says, I scattered Israel with the whirlwind through all of the things that they had to go through in history when they fled and they started to, when it was time for them to run, like when they ran in Asia and they got kicked out, scrolls got burned and everything, is that they all went different directions. They got scattered. Right? Read on.
Among all the nations.
Amongst how many?
All.
Amongst all the nations. And this is what we forget. People think the Western Hemisphere is not all the nations. Russia's a part of the nations. That's what people refer to as Gog and Magog. The Solomon Islands, Fiji, Philippines, Spain, all of Europe, all of Africa, Australia. All of these places count as the nations. All of the nations. We were scattered amongst all of the nations. That includes areas of Asia, areas of the Middle East, areas of India. So when you get people, and this is where it gets, a little difficult, because you can bring it back to me for a minute, Kanash. Because let me see something. Go to Titus. Titus chapter 3 and verse 9. And this is where it gets confusing and it gets a little difficult, because the scriptures tell you, Numbers 1 and 18, you are what your father is, the seed of your father. Here's the thing. We forget how DNA works. We forget recessive, dominant trait. Yeah, hold that. Recessive traits, dominant traits, so on and so forth, right? So you'll get Israelites that that look, because their father may have been Hispanic or their father may have been 10 tribe, and their mother may have been Asian or white or something like that. And so now they look more white. And let's say they get a light skinned Southern Kingdom wife or a light skinned Hispanic wife. Their son's probably going to come out and almost look white, but almost exactly white, right? And so we pick and choose when we want to say, well, it's not physical features, it's DNA. Excuse me, it's a genealogy. It's who your father is, who your forefather is, right? I've seen many of people. We got a brother, my brother up in Oregon. He loves to use himself as an example. Brother Kama, right? Up in Oregon. Him and his brothers, they look like Edomites. They father is black. His mother is white, his father is black. But you look at his family, it's like, man, people think he'll tell you this himself. People always think that I'm an Edomite. I'm pretty sure you're going to text me after this like, damn, I like that. Yeah.
I thought he was one too, not to be honest.
Well, and then you see, you are what your father is. You see his father, it's like, oh, nah, wait a minute. And but people have this misconception in their head because they're like, so if he has a kid and his kid comes out looking this way, you tell him he's Israelite too? Yes, because you are what your father is. Why am I saying all of this? Because you got a lot of quote-unquote Negro-only Israelites. And these Israelites will swear up and down, if you're not this color, you're not Israel. Now, mind you, there's many of us that are this color and some even darker, and their daddy is white. Their daddy is Asian. But because they're this color, that makes them an Israelite. Color does not make you an Israelite. Bloodline does. Now, mind you, everyone knows this. It's scientifically proven that every color comes from black. So you can have two black parents and your kid can still come out light brown. You can have two black parents and your kids can still come out almost white. You can have two black parents and your kids can come out with loose curly hair, even if both of their hair is coarse. That's possible because that's our genetic makeup. The Most High made it possible where we can have everything. I have two daughters. One of them is a little lighter than my oldest is a little lighter. She ends up getting with a brother as she gets older, and her husband is a light-skinned brother, and he got loose curls. When they have a child, that child may look like, oh, I don't know if that brother's Israel, but all you got to do is look at the father and then the father's father. You look at my daughter, she looks quote-unquote mixed. Her mom's dad is black. Her mom's mom is black and Native American. Her mom just happened to be light-skinned. So when we try to make this argument of they don't look like one, well, that's stupid because there's a lot of Edomites that don't look like Edomites. You can't on one hand say, no, you Edomite because you're daddy. But then you see an Israelite, but because they're a lot lighter than what you think they should be, no, they can't be an Israelite. That's stupid. That's ignorant. Read that, Titus 3:9.
It's the book of Titus, verse 3,
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3, verse 9, Salakia. But avoid foolish questions and genealogies.
But avoid foolish questions and genealogies. Read.
And contentions.
Salakia.
Contentions and their survivings about the law.
So, the scriptures tell you, and here's the thing. He said, and strivings, strivings about the law. Con. Here's the thing. There's a reason why it says that. You got to remember two things. One, we will be discontinued from our heritage. A lot of us will go into slavery. We got a lot of people out here that are what you call divestors. What is that? Divester is someone who doesn't want to marry their race, but instead wants to marry other races. A lot of our women are divesting with Caucasian men. That's why you got a lot of kids that are running around here looking like me, but they daddy white. They daddy white. And so you look at them and you're like, oh, man, it's an Israelite. No, it's not. Their daddy, no. Yeah, their daddy is white. Well, what's his daddy? His daddy's Polish, German, Czechoslovakian. They can trace their line at least back to the early 1000 AD. We white. But they look like this. So you say, oh, they Israel. No, they're not. You are the seed of your father. That's what we have to understand. A lot of our brothers and sisters migrated to areas of Asia, India, and so on. And yes, they ended up procreating with those people. So now we got Israelites that, like, oh, no, you don't look like an Israelite. But yeah, yes. That's why the scriptures tell you, go to Romans. Romans 8. Let me see. Romans chapter 8 and verse 16.
It's the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 16.
Uh-huh.
The Spirit itself.
The color itself.
The Spirit itself.
The Spirit itself, read.
Beareth witness to our spirit.
Beareth witness with our spirit, read.
That we are children of God.
That we are the children of God. What does that look like? If you read 2nd Ezra 3 and 36, it tells you, Israel by name hath kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. So you may look at them and be like, man, I don't know. Then you see their lineage, their father, their grandfather. Oh, yeah, they got, yes, yeah. Some of them be like, well, I don't know who my parents are. That's happened too. Again, one of the curses. Do your spirit bear witness to these curses, to being able to keep these laws? If so, then there's a very, 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 very highly, strong chance that you are an Israelite. Because of course you're like, people like, so show me where such and such went through, what is it called? Went on slave ships. Like, bro, that's a stupid question. Because not every single Israelite went through every single curse. And that's what we try to tell people all the time. Because not every single Israelite went through every single curse. Show me where Mexicans went on slave ships. First of all, I can show you how Mexicans went through way more curses than we did. Southern Kingdom didn't go through. If you go and read these curses, Southern Kingdom didn't go through a lot of these curses. Show me where the Southern Kingdom cattle was all of the Southern Kingdom's cattle not in biblical times. When I say biblical times, I'm talking about the ancient times. I'm talking about right now, so-called African Americans or whatever. Show me where their cattle was all killed and taken away from them and all slain before their eyes. You don't see that, but you see that with the so-called Latinos and their foreparents. Clear as day. So that's why you have to be careful when you say things like that, because then the burden of proof is going to be on you to prove all of the other ones. Do you bear witness to these curses? Can you keep these laws? And that's if we can't trace your lineage, which a lot of us can't trace it that far back. So let's go back here. I want to touch it again. Go back to the PowerPoint. Let's read it again. The oral history of B'nai Manasseh that was passed down from 2,700 years. This was, what's that? What are we in 2020? Minus 2,000, that's 0 AD, so to speak. 700 years before that. Yeah, it's around the time of the Assyrian captivities. He's saying this got passed down from the Assyrian captivity on. Describes their escape from slavery in Assyria to Media and Persia. From there, they moved to Afghanistan, which is the Middle East, mostly through less traveled areas, ever on the lookout for kings or powerful people who might drag them back into slavery, which is, one of the curses, going into slavery to your oppressors and enemies. From Afghanistan, they traveled toward Hindu Kush, which is India, and proceeded to Tibet, then to Kaifeng, reaching the Chinese city around 240 BC. The B'nai Manasseh believed that while in China, this is what their forefathers have told them, while in China their ancestors were enslaved yet again. During their years there, large numbers of Israelites were killed and their assimilation started. These events caused the Israelites to flee and live in caves. The group was expelled in 100 CE and their leather scrolls were confiscated and burned. At that point, different groups went in various directions. Some went down to the Mekong River into Vietnam, the Philippines, Siam, Thailand, Malaysia, while some of the Israelites moved to Burma and to West India. Till today, these people are referred to as the cave dwellers. So we see that they have literally oral traditions. They have history from their foreparents. Because remember, this was before the conquest. And mind you, if you're in Asia, Europeans didn't go over there to Asia and start trying to colonize them. Asia would be like, what the hell? They had this information and they were never even conquered. And what I mean by that, conquered by the Spaniards, conquered by the white people. So they had no reason to know about the Bible. But somehow, some way, they say, yeah, no, our forefathers are from this time. Our forefathers are from this area. Then it talks about their leather scrolls that were burnt, their book of the law, their Torah, because when you go into Africa, Ethiopia has it. They have their own Ethiopian Bible, which has all of the books plus a few more, or plus the apocryphal books and so on and so forth. It's one of the oldest Bibles left on earth. In the different villages or communities, or Jewish communities rather, in Africa, they all have their own rendition of Torah, and they all keep the laws a certain way. In the Philippines, as a matter of fact, our brother, the bishop out in the Philippines, Brother Zabad, he came in contact with a family in a village, I believe, on another island. And this family had been keeping the laws far before they heard anything about, oh, these Israelites or any congregations or anything like that. They said their family had been keeping these laws and statutes and commandments for generations in the Philippines. This is why people look at us, oh, look, they let heathens in their congregation. No, we're letting Israelites in our congregation. You guys, people are so hell-bent on gathering the lost sheep in America, which all praise to the Most High. We need that. But we forget about, go to Isaiah chapter 11. I'm going to show you something. We forget about this. Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 11. I think we're going to read 11 and 12. Isaiah 11 and verse 12 as well. Read that.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 11. And it shall come to pass that in the day that the Lord shall set at hand, the second time to recover the remnant of his people.
The who?
The remnant.
The remnant, the dispersed, right? It's not everybody. As we tell people all the time. This and excuse me, let me clear this up before somebody mess up my words, right? We do not say Filipinos are Israelites. We say Israelites are scattered in the Philippines. We do not say East Indians are Israelites. We say we say Israelites are scattered in India. We're not saying every single one of them is Israelites. We know the majority of them came to the Americas. We know this already. But what we're saying is we have a remnant, hear me out, a remnant there that still needs to be gathered. And if these people are, 2 Ezra 3 and 36, keeping these laws, if we can try the Spirit, whether it's of the Most High God, if the Spirit is bearing witness to being a child of God, how are we going to sit there and say no because of where they grew up at? How are we going to sit there and say no because of where they were born? Do you know, and we have this conversation all the time, which is why, and no shade to the brothers, but this is why we talk about like the 12 tribes chart, right? Hopefully brothers don't take offense to it. If an African American is born, I don't know, in Georgia or something, right? And his parents, and he grows up and he decides, I hate it in America. I'm going to go move to Brazil. Now, no, let's say, make it easy. I'm going to move to Mexico, right? He goes down to Mexico, marries a woman in Mexico, and they have a kid. This kid decides, I'm going to move to California, right? They run into some Israelites. Daddy was Southern Kingdom, right? Daddy was Georgia, transatlantic slave trade history, all of that, right? Actually, let's water it down a little more. Move to Mexico. The other son now decides he's going to move to Peru. Then the other son decides he's going to move out of the country to Spain. They have a kid way out in Spain. Now we in like the fourth generation now. They have a kid in Spain. This kid decides he moves back to America. He runs into some Israelites. They're like, oh, brother, they out there teaching. Oh, where are you from? Oh, my family's from Spain. my dad, I grew up in Spain. Oh, okay. So, he probably Edomite then, because, Spanish, them Edomites. But wait. Where's his dad from? Well, his dad's from Mexico. Oh, wait. No, see, he tribe Issachar. Where's his dad from? I don't know. Well, see, most likely you tribe Issachar, but his daddy is from Georgia. You see how it becomes problematic? Not to mention, in early history, American history, so many Africans fled into Native American tribes and villages to flee from persecution from the British. Then we married with a lot of them. So how do you know which is which? Becomes problematic, right? But it becomes a problem when we start looking at features as opposed to checking the spirit. The features is definitely a big deal, because then you can, hey, what's your dad from, or his dad is. If you can have somebody that can follow their line back, then yeah, clearly, boom, yeah, you out of here, or yeah, boom, you're Israelite, right? But that's not always the case. For example, they see our brothers out there. Our brothers in the Philippines put in work, studying their butts off, active in almost every class when they can be. Mind you, they're a third world country. Our Israelite brothers in Ghana and Nigeria, the work that they put in. Mind you, again, third world country. And people are like, oh, no, see, look, y'all letting Hamites in. Oh, no, look, see, y'all letting heathens in. You can find in the history that these people migrated there. So who's to say we're not gathering the remnant? How are you going to sit here and say we're not gathering the remnant? Because you're too dense to understand this history. The same thing when we get into the Latino argument. Oh, well, they don't got the big nose and the big lip. Bro, I know people with white daddies and granddaddies that got big nose and big lips. Don't mean they Israel. They took the features from their mama. It's a foolish argument. Israelites are in the East. Israelites are all over the four corners of the earth. Let's continue to read that. Isaiah 11:11. Start from the top.
It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 11. And it shall come to pass that in the day that the Lord shall set his hand against the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pharaoh and from Cush and from Elam and from
Shinar.
And from Hamath and from the islands of the sea.
And from the islands of the sea. And from Elam, which we know as India. And from Cush, which we know as Ethiopia. And some people even say it's India, or portions of India, right? And from Egypt, which we know we fled into. The Lord's going to recover us from all over the four corners of the earth. So to say that our people are not our people because they don't look like you is asinine. It's crazy. And what's more offensive is that I see these ones that y'all say, oh, no, they're not Israelites. They more obedient to the Most High God than the ones that we say is Israelites. They spirit bear witness harder than... These is what the laws is. Okay, boom, we jumping straight into it. What do we have to stop doing? Boom, okay. I've seen it with my own eyes, craziest stuff. So and what's so cold is some of our brothers that are married to like Filipino women that are in the truth, or quote unquote Filipino women, Israelites that were scattered there, came into the truth, locked in. What do I have to do? What are we supposed to be doing? Let me understand these laws. What's my duty as a wife? And they do it better than the ones that, I can tell I'm Israelite. Crazy. It's wild. It's crazy. And this is stuff that I'm telling you that I physically see. I've seen. So when you try to denounce brothers and sisters because they are of the dispersed, they weren't born in the Western Hemisphere, you're turning away a lot of Israelites. Again, we don't say these people are Israelites, but we say that Our people are scattered in these areas, and history proves it. History proves our point. History says it as well. Now, if you want to say, well, let's dig further in and see where specifically, that's a whole nother argument. Cool, let's do that. But to just sit here and say, nah, we're going to just disannul all of that. Nah, we're going to just cancel them all. Nah, none of them. That's foolish. That's retarded. We just seen, the Bible just said, I'm going to gather Israel from the remnant, of Israel from Assyria. So there's still some in Assyria. Egypt. So we know we fled into Egypt and North Africa. Cush, Pathros, Elam, Shinar, and the islands of the sea. So what, they not, so all of a sudden they're not there? Shit, the Bible says they there. The Bible says they're there. Let's not be ignorant, Israel. Take us back to the PowerPoint. Today, the descendants of those Israelites who settled in India and Burma have different names depending on where they live. Some are known as Shinlung, some Kuki, Mitso, Lushai, and Mar. In 1894, Christian missionaries arrived, so this is way after, right? These Israelites already knew that they were there, knew who they were. Missionaries arrived to Manipur area of northeast India, intent on converting the local population. The Kukis, having been brought up in their oral history of their link to the ancestors Manasseh and other stories, recognize some of the Bible stories. So when they were sitting there reading and telling them the Bible, they're like, oh, we remember some of this. Now, mind you, they didn't even have a Bible because, remember, their scrolls and stuff was burnt up. But they remembered the story that was told to them. And they eventually, converted to what they thought was the religion of their ancestors and began practicing Christianity. One Benai Manasseh, or one Children of Manasseh song, which had been handed down and carried throughout their travels, describes part of the Exodus from Egypt. This is the song. We must keep Passover festival because we crossed the Red Sea on the dry land. At night we crossed with a fire, and by day with the cloud. Enemies pursued us with chariots, and the sea swallowed them up, and used them as food for the fish. And when we were thirsty, we received water from the rock. Of course, it was in their native tongue, so it probably rhymed. I don't know. But we see that they already knew all of this history. Bring it back to us, Kanash. They already knew all of this history. They didn't need Edomites coming over there and teaching them this stuff. They already had all of this. And then they said, dang, I'm listening to you read these passages from your book. That sounds very familiar. It sounds like my stuff. These are people in India, the Philippines, Africa, Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Greece, Spain, Italy. There's Israelites in all those areas. Go to Acts chapter 2. And it's so cold. This one's so cold because when we start to talk bad about, these individuals, and it's like, yo, no, they keeping these laws, or they might be our people, or they're saying that they're our people. And y'all said, no, they're not, because he said his daddy was a Eritrean, or his granddaddy was, Ethiopian. That don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. Paul was a damn Roman. If he had kids and his kid said, my daddy was a Roman, said, yeah, that ain't no real Israelite. His daddy was a Roman. That's stupid. It's stupid as hell. Watch this. That used to happen. That happened in the time of the apostles too. Acts chapter 2. I'm gonna tell you right now. Let's read. Let's start at verse 5.
It's the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 5. And they were dwelling at Jerusalem. Jews.
There were Jews dwelling in Jerusalem. They all came together for the feast, right? Read.
Devout men.
Devout men, read.
Out of every nation under heaven.
Out of where?
Every nation under heaven.
They came from everywhere. Now watch this. Read. Salaki, I don't even want to read all of that. Let's drop down to, I want you to read I want you to read verse 9. So verse 7, it says, and they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galileans, which is referencing to the northern kingdom or the area of northern Israel. These are all Israelites, right? It says, and how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? So they're like, how are we hearing, how are we understanding each other? Because they understood they were all from different nations. But remember, it said at the top, they were all Jews. These were all Israelites that came together on the Feast of Pentecost. But now let's see what they call themselves. Verse 9.
Parthians.
Parthians. Parthians. No, your daddy a Parthian. You're not an Israelite. No, these are Jews from Parthia, excuse me. Parthians. Read.
And Medes.
Medes. Little area just outside of Persia. Oh, your daddy a Persian. You're not an Israelite. No, these are Jews that live in Persia. Excuse me, that live in Media. Well, that live in Persia. That's Persia. Read. And Elamites. Elamites. They're from India. Yeah, his daddy Elamite. His daddy from India. He ain't no Israelite. That's not true. These are Jews that dwelled in Elam, that dwelled in India. Read.
And the dwellers of the Mesopotamia.
Dwellers of Mesopotamia. Babylon area, which is Iraq, Iran area, that whole Fertile Crescent. That's Mesopotamia, right? But these not Jews. They Babylonian. That's not true. Read.
And in Judea.
And now, of course, Judea. So these are Jews from Judea. Read. Cappadocia.
And in Cappadocia.
I don't remember where that's at, but I believe that's in Rome. Cappadocia. Read on.
In Pontus.
And Pontus.
And Asia.
And Asia. Oh, he Asian. That's his forefather. That's from Asia, Asia Minor, whatever. Okay, look. These are Jews that dwell. Damn, all by you. No, these are Jews that dwelt in these places, but they called themselves these things because that's where they were. Because remember, we read in verse 5, dwelling at Jerusalem, Jews, devout men under every nation under heaven, from every nation under heaven. All Israelites that had migrated to these areas because that's what we did. Not all the Jews stayed in Israel. That's why when you read the history, even with Christ's family had to migrate to Judea, migrate to Jerusalem for the feast days. We read that in Luke. So they weren't even staying in Jerusalem. Some of them stayed in Israel. Some of them didn't stay in Israel. After the Babylonian captivity, not everybody came back to Jerusalem. The Persians treated some of the people so good, they said, I'm going to just stay up there. I don't need to go to Jerusalem. I'm cool. We read about Tobit. It never said Tobit went back to Jerusalem. Some people stayed where they were. And then, to be in compliance with the law, they would come down to Jerusalem to keep the feast. But these were the places that they were at, so this is what they said that they were. So you can't say, "Oh no, see, look, he said his daddy from Nigeria or his daddy's from Congo. That ain't no Israelite." That's not true. We got Israelites there. That's ignorant to say that. That's why Titus said it. Don't be caught up in endless genealogy. A lot of y'all can't go far enough back past your grandpa. Maybe your great grandpa if you're lucky. Now, mind you, your great-grandpa was still like the 1800s. You still 200 years removed because we don't know if one of his forefathers was a slave master that raped one of the women. You don't know. You don't know. So it's ignorant, very ignorant when we speak like that. There are Israelites in the Eastern Hemisphere that we completely forget about. Acts chapter 2 could Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, Libya. Libya is North Africa, just west of Egypt. Just west of Egypt. The Arabians, the Cretes, Rome, Cyrenians. We're everywhere. So when we try to make this argument, it doesn't make sense. Not to mention, go and look at the history. Of Mexico. A lot of natives to Mexico fled, the ones that they say are of the tribe of Issachar. Again, we don't adhere to the 12 tribes chart, but this is to prove my point. Those that say that they call Issachar, bunch of them migrated to the Philippines. Bunch of Mexicans left Mexico and migrated to the Philippines. So at the very least, there's a few Issacharites out of all of them, because you say, oh, them were Spaniards. Okay, there's a few of them that are, from Issachar. There's a few Israelites that was in there that went to the Philippines, and we know that they had, pretty sure that they procreated and had kids. So we see that they're Israelites all across the four corners. And these are just I didn't even get to finish the research because we have other islands, other countries where we were. They talk about the history of there were Jews in the Solomon Islands. I didn't get to grab all of that information, but they talk about that. They talk about Jews being in Fiji. They talk about a remnant being in Hawaii or the Pacific Islanders. There's a remnant that went there as well. There's brothers that I've sat down and had conversations with that, like, look, dude, the historians say this. You can find all of these books and this information way before white people started conquering these areas. These people went to these places. Again, that's not to say these people are Israelites. That's to say Israelites are scattered in these areas. And you cannot argue and say no, because then God will be a liar, because God said, I'm going to grab the remnant, the outcast of Israel, from the four corners of the earth. So that means all the countries. We everywhere. So I knew this class wouldn't be that long. I'll praise it. See, I told you about like an hour and a half.
God.
I was close.
Could have went longer, but it is what it is.
God. But I think, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Lord willing, if I get to circle around to this lesson again, I definitely want to touch on the other. I want to bring out this information plus more, where we can really sit back and dive into, Lord willing, all the nations. Because our forefathers, one, are of the sand of the sea, and two, the scripture said we would be scattered across the four corners of the earth. And so when we're gathering the righteous, when we're gathering the lost sheep in these other countries, you can't sit here and say, oh, these are heathens. Oh, these are y'all letting heathens in the congregation. No, that's not true, because our forefathers are in these lands too. And you guys get confused because they're not dark enough, because their nose not big enough, because their lips not big enough. It's so cold. I see so many dark-skinned sisters and brothers that don't have a bunch of Negroid features aside from their skin color. Little noses, little lips. Some of them be skinny. They're supposed to have a figure. Not all of them. That's very narrow-minded. That's very dense for you to think that way. That's where the confusion comes in. Our foreparents were scattered across the four corners. Our people, will be reclaimed from the four corners of the earth. The majority of them are in the Americas, absolutely. But there is a remnant of them all over the earth. And it's our job to gather the lost sheep of the house of Israel. It doesn't matter where they are. Philippines, Africa, Asia, Europe, doesn't matter, India, wherever they are, we're supposed to gather them. Because it didn't say only the Israelites that are in the Americas are going to make it. It didn't say that. So we got to, one, check our spirit, and two, just go back and do the research. Because there are tons of Israelites in the East. Not just Africa, not just the Middle East, all over the Eastern Hemisphere. So we got to go back, we got to do our research. So we just had a Q&A on Monday. Lord willing, more you guys tune into the next one at the beginning of the first month of January, the first Monday of January, when we have Q&A again. There's so many people that have questions that all of a sudden don't have questions when Q&A comes around. 1,000,001 questions coming in the emails and just physically via DMs or just talking to individuals. Got a bunch of questions, but then when it's time to actually ask questions, don't nobody want to ask questions. So Q&A every first Monday. Make sure you guys are tapping in. Tuesdays, every single Tuesday is Bible Basics. Y'all tap in to get this strong foundation. Wednesdays, tap in to get this historical information, this strong foundation. Every second and fourth Thursday, stick to the script. Tap in with us. Make sure you're getting your spirit fed. Every single Friday, room 144. Every single Saturday, Bishop Tazaya Wan, Feed the Sheep. Y'all tap in with these classes. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you get notifications, because a lot of truth platforms, a lot of truth channels, they get shadow banned. So it's difficult for us to get the word out if y'all not sharing it, because a lot of what we talk about goes against the, what's the stupid thing, community guidelines, community standards of YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, so on and so forth. So then they begin to shadow ban us, and then the word doesn't go out. So now we just have to start having our brothers and sisters actually physically share these classes, so we can continue to gather the sheep, so we can continue to feed the people. So y'all make sure y'all tap in with our classes. If you got any questions, hit us up at reply@truenation.org. DM True Nation Israelite Congregation on Facebook. Drop a comment on these, and we'll have somebody reply or reach out to you guys. Tap in with us. We out there trying to feed the sheep. And if you got anyone in any of these other states or any of these other countries that want to be a part of True Nation, want to be a part of the family, want to be a part of doing the works, as the scriptures say, the work is plenty, but the laborers are few. The harvest is plenty, excuse me, but the laborers are few. If you got anyone that want to tap in and start building and start growing, be a part of this organization as we continue to grow and feed the sheep, hit us up, reply@truenation.org. Comment on the videos. Let us know. Hit us up, True Nation Israelite Congregation, the messenger. If you follow any of us on Instagram or any other platform, hit us up directly and talk to us. Let's build. Let's start getting boots on the ground all over the country. Let's start feeding the sheep. So with that, Brother Yarab, Brother Darash, we signing out. Shalom.
Shalom.